Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, Kristen.
I have to leave probably like 15 minutes early. Just wanted to let you know.
Kim, are we expecting everybody? We're nowhere close to a quorum.
No, we're not. I know. Let me see. Let me go down the list here. Matt said he was not available today. Karen wasn't available. Sandy and Michelle Almer weren't available, but everybody else should have been. And I have Lisa Villarreal from DHS here to talk about the hormonal contraceptive statute that passed, and we need to write rules around it.
Mhm. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
And we have 4 people from the original member list, and 11 is the total, so we're not. We need 2 more people.
I'll text Kelly and Emily and see if they'll get on, if they're getting on.
Elisa, have you heard from Laura Mercer? I believe she was going to join. She accepted. There she is. Ms. Mercer, thank you for joining. We're waiting for 2 more members to join. We have a quorum. I haven't experienced this before, but it's the first time we're having a quorum issue.
Kelly's coming. She says she's having computer issues.
Anything from Emily?
5 minutes, she said.
Is Mark Boson going to join?
I did not reach out to him. I can.
All right, Emily's joining. There's Mark. I can take roll call. I think we have a quorum. Anybody else that joins is just gravy at that point.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order at 2:04 p.m. This is the Arizona State Board of Pharmacy Task Force meeting on rule making. Dr. Gandhi, you want to go ahead and take it away?
Certainly. Ms. Walmsley,
Here.
Ms. Nair,
Here.
Mr. Dang,
Here.
Mr. Pond is not in attendance. Ms. Howe,
Here.
Ms. Fine, Ms. Nishi, Mr. Bozen,
Here.
Mr. Morris,
Here.
okay, Ms. Sutcliffe is absent, Ms. Almer is absent. Just waiting on Kelly. Ms. Villarreal.
Here.
Is Sheila joining also, Lisa?
She is not, just me.
Okay. And Ms. Mercer.
Here.
Going back to Kelly. Kelly, fine.
I am on. I apologize for the delay.
It's all right. So we do have 6 original members out of the 11, so we have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Terrific. Any conflicts of interest anybody wants to disclose today? All right, hearing none, let's jump into the meat of our discussion around the regulations. Dr. Gandhi, do you want to start with the hormonal contraceptives?
Yes, Madam Chair, I think that's where we should start. That law is going to be in effect here shortly, and we should start getting rule writing around that going prior to starting off where we left off last meeting. I did want to introduce 2 individuals on a call that are joining us for the discussion on hormonal contraceptives, as stated in ARS 32-1979.09. We have to engage with Department of Health Services. I believe Lisa is representing them, and then Laura Mercer is also joining. She's with the Association for Obstetrics and Gynecology, I believe. ACOG is what they go by. Based on the statute, they both have to partake in the discussion. Earlier, just recently, I sent you guys language, what other states may be doing around hormonal contraceptives for your review. And rather than recreate the wheel, we can probably use a lot of that information to create our own language. Any thoughts?
One thing that I noticed kind of looking at it, I think it might give us a good place to start, but I think it might incorporate things that aren't necessarily required by the statute. The statute just requires the procedures to have, standard procedures shall require the completion of the nationally recognized self-screening risk assessment before dispensing, and then providing the patient with information about the self-administered hormonal contraceptive. So I just want to make sure that we're not adding additional requirements that aren't specifically required per the statute. Like the visit summary. Trying to see, hold on, I'm having computer issues, so I apologize.
Yeah, I think that's in 4, Kelly.
Yes, yeah, in section 4. And then the algorithm.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too.
The risk assessment is very, very detailed as far as like assessing all of the risks. And so that to me sounds like, if this, then do this, then prescribe this. And I want to try to avoid that. I think when we worked with the OBGYN Association, you know, we wanted it to have the proper procedures in place to make sure this is done well, but we also didn't want to make it so complex and complicated that individuals and pharmacists in particular would have a difficult time incorporating this into their practice.
If I may, to expand upon that, during the drafting of this, when it was first a bill, it was intentional that we avoided the language of prescribing in order to not need to worry about the sunset or sunrise process, but additionally to limit liability. And so there was the intent from the beginning with this that it would be a standing order from the health department, much like naloxone, which also changes a little bit the interaction with the patient at the pharmacy.
I have a couple issues with grammar and spelling. I don't know if you wanted to address that.
I don't think this is an actual draft yet, so I don't know that we need to go that far yet. I think this is more just a summary of where we want to start, right, Dr. Gandhi?
It is. This is language we pulled from the other states, so it's not something we drafted at this time.
Oh,
Okay.
like
And
the
now-
first,
Well, one that I would just want to make sure we correct is it says seemed instead of signed. That's not going to
Yeah.
come up in a spell check.
and summary too.
And
The
summary
summary.
spelled wrong. Yeah. That one will come up in a spell check though. I was wondering if we needed to have language about selecting which product that's being prescribed. Does it need to be discussed that they get the opportunity to select which one's appropriate?
The pharmacist will be working with the patient based on the completion of that self-screening risk assessment. So having a conversation with them about what option's going to be best for them based on a number of different factors. The law allows certain products to be dispensed. So I think the standing order can, list what those are, but then, really our rules are just the requirement of that self-screening risk assessment. Kim, I don't know if you have a copy of it or if someone does on their computer show it. I think it might help for those who haven't seen one to
In
It's
that
there.
document that he provided, it's on
attached,
page
yeah.
3.
Oh, is it? Okay. Page 3. Oh. So is it, if the statute says the procedure shall require pharmacists to do both of the following, so can't the rule just state what that is, that the pharmacist is required to obtain a completed self-screening risk from the patient, keep that on file according to their pharmacy's SOPs. And then the information about providing the patient with information, proper patient education materials, which is what we already would be required to do when we dispense medications anyhow, but I don't know how much more detail is necessary. In my opinion, I thought we tried to be very detailed in the statute to try to avoid a bunch of extra details unless there's something specific missing. But I think the standing order will also kind of complete the statute as well.
I have a few thoughts and comments. One is on the notes we have, I think, here from the board, where it says authority on number 1. It says, signed by the director of health services. I believe in the statute, it also lists the county health department. I think we need to spread this out a little bit so it doesn't all rest on one individual signing a standing order for the state, and so counties could do it. Is that a possibility? Secondly, I just looked at a couple of the other states. I don't know who did all the background work on this. I really appreciate it. It would also be helpful if you have links to the other standing orders. I'd like to see it. It did seem that the vast majority of them do require a particular training for pharmacists in order to participate in this. Is that going to be a part? I think I looked at the list, and of the 17 states that currently have a standing order like this, it's like 13 require some kind of
I
particular.
don't think any of the other states have a standing order. Kelly, is that correct? I think most of them are independent authority for the pharmacist.
So there's a,
No. Oh, sorry,
So-
go ahead.
no, I didn't mean, the question was addressed to you, Kelly, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, a majority of them do have prescriptive authority. There are some that have a standing order or refer to standing order. Utah was the one that we modeled this off of. So we were kind of drafting language, and it seemed at the time, based on the stakeholders we were working with, that seemed like the best approach for our state based on not necessarily our preference, but what we thought we could get through in the legislature at the time.
But Utah requires training. Right.
I have seen, I believe in some of the states that allow for independent authority for that training to be pharmacy school. Is that right? I feel like that is the case in a couple other states. I remember having extensive training on this in school.
But I agree, there should be some sort of training unless it was included in the curriculum for sure.
The second question I just had was about the 3 years. Is that based off of another state as well?
That is not in our statute either. So that I understand that the need to look at what other states have done, but I don't want to add additional criteria that wasn't the original intention behind.
Okay, no, that's on the notes that were provided, I thought.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Oh, okay.
And again, these were just pulled from the other states. This is not language we drafted, but wanted a starting point as far as discussion goes.
I had two questions on a pharmacist must not, and I understand this is sort of the summary from the other states. Why can't the pharmacist require a patient to schedule an appointment? I understand they may not, but I'm just not following why they're not allowed to.
Mhm. Okay.
They can't require it, maybe? It doesn't mean they can.
And that's not in our statute.
No,
Not necessarily where it comes from. The public policy intent was to make it as accessible as possible, and so that women could walk in at any time and access this service if the pharmacy was open. Whether that's a good idea or not is up for debate, but that's the intent behind it.
Mm.
Well, and I can speak to the medicine behind it as the representative from the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, which is basically that our data demonstrate that hormonal contraceptives are safe and should be probably available over the counter, but absent that FDA change. But we shouldn't be withholding hormonal contraceptives because somebody's due for their pap test or because somebody's due for their mammogram. And so I think the issue is really if somebody's not a candidate based on the screening tool, then they should be referred back to their provider.
I agree with all of that. I'm just from a pharmacist scheduling perspective, and we schedule vaccines, we schedule everything else. I just don't want to see them overloaded. And the pharmacies can make their own decision as to how busy or not. I just don't want to see a pharmacist get in trouble because he says you need to come back at a different time.
Well, isn't it just, like I was saying, you must not require for an appointment to be scheduled? That means that you would be able to or not.
I just think we need to scrap that. I think Cam was just putting some things that were included, and I don't think that one's necessary.
I would agree. I think we stay silent on it and allow the pharmacy to do what it has the capability to do. And if they need extra time for someone to come back to fill out the extra paperwork, that's fine. That's safe practice.
And then related
I
to the
agree.
3-year comment, related to the 3-year comment, which we may already be scrapping, I just don't know what evidence of a clinical visit is, and I don't want to get into big fights about what is appropriate evidence of a clinical visit.
Cam, I just sent you the Utah standing order too.
I'll take a look at that.
Mhm. So this is Kevin Deng. The two questions that I have for the team is number one, pharmacist still has the right to refuse dispensing or selling contraceptives, right? So this rule here doesn't force us to dispense or sell contraceptive to patients who approach us and request for contraceptives. Am I correct? Am I correct, Ken?
Well, we have a statute that allows all healthcare providers to not provide service as far as abortion and so forth, contraceptive. That's that. Is it a religious clause? I'm not sure, but that's already.
Conscientious objection.
Yeah, that's already in another part of our section in the statutes. And again, this is professional judgment. If you're doing the assessment and you don't feel that this person meets the requirements, qualifications, at that point, you leverage your professional judgment and not dispense anything, right? So everything falls back onto that, Kevin.
And this is an extra clinical service to Kevin. So it's kind of like immunizations, even though we have rules on the books, it doesn't require anybody to provide the service. It's just those pharmacists that choose to offer this in their pharmacy can utilize the standing order to provide hormonal contraceptives to patients who qualify based on the statute.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that. The second question I have for the team is under section number 4, it says in the middle of the section, it says advise the patient to consult with a primary care provider or women's health care practitioner. Why are we letting the patients manage that part? Why can't we as pharmacists reach out to the patient's physicians on their behalf? And this is my concern. What if the patient unintentionally not contacting her physician, and then here we are having a patient who's on multiple medications, and a lot of time patients jump from one pharmacy to the next. On many occasions, you would not know what other medications the patient is taking unless if the patient tells you what she's on. So if we as pharmacists, before we dispense contraceptives to the patient, I think we should be the driver and contacting the patient's physicians just to make sure that all the drug interactions, the details of it are being discussed in length or in depth with a physician.
So there have been studies that looked at this. Can women self-screen for candidacy to use hormonal contraceptives? And in fact, this is embarrassing to me as an OBGYN, but in fact, the data demonstrate that women are better at screening themselves for hormonal contraceptive contraindications than healthcare providers are at screening them for those contraindications. And so extending that to address your question, women don't need to have a doctor saying that they can take the birth control. They can do the self-screening tool and determine that they are a candidate or not a candidate for the birth control. That's what the evidence-based literature would support.
And if we
And
had
so
to contact the physician every time, it kind of alleviates the need for the statute in the first place. Because if we're on the phone having a conversation, we probably have more information about the medications a patient's on than a primary care physician would because of all the specialists they see. But in any case, even if we could get a hold of them, that process would take way longer. We might as well just go back to the method of requiring prescriptions, because then it it doesn't really give greater access to women who want to be on these products.
I see that, Kelly, from the clinical side, as we all know that contraceptives interact with antifungals, antibiotics and whatnot. So let's say if the patient comes to me and refuse to disclose the antibiotics or antifungals that she's currently on, and I have no idea whether or not the patient is being treated with any of these drugs. Without contacting the physician, I would be clueless. And inadvertently, I am subjecting the patient to a drug that interact with the.
How is that any different than a normal DUR, Kevin?
Yeah. That risk is just
My point is this. Let's say the patient, let's say I'm working at Fry's, patient comes to me and asking for contraceptives. And 2 days ago, patient got her antibiotic filled at CVS. How would I know?
How would you know that now?
If I was to contact the physician and say, Doc, I just prescribed contraceptive to Jane Smith, and this is a drug that I had decided to go with, whether it's patch, pill, or whatever, then the doc will say, yep, 2 days ago, she came to my office, I gave her a prescription, antibiotic prescription, and now it becomes well open to both the physician and the pharmacist. The only concern that I'm trying to point out here is that patients have the right to go to multiple pharmacies in one day. But if the pharmacy systems are not connecting or interfacing with each other, you would be clueless on what the patient is currently taking. So my only concern is if we were to let the patient be the driver of contacting their physician, we may be overlooking a very important drug-drug interaction that we can intervene.
Could I ask a question for my own education? To that point, you mentioned patients can go to multiple pharmacies in the same day. Well, it turns out they can go to multiple doctors in the same day too. And so even if I'm somebody's primary care physician and you call me, I may not know that this morning she was at an urgent care and was prescribed something. So I'm not, and you guys as pharmacists can educate me, but to me, I'm not sure how this is any different than like what we already have.
But correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't practiced in a while and things may have evolved, but if I process a birth control prescription today and an antibiotic was filled in a different pharmacy, and I want to say majority of prescriptions are on insurance, right? Wouldn't you get a kickback saying person's also, there's an overlap of therapy or
Yes.
drug interaction kickback from the insurance company?
Yeah.
Yes, we would.
So, Kevin, if we're contacting the physician, it will put you as the middleman. What are you going to say, like, to the patient? Well, the doctor wants to see you. What time can you come in? They said this works. Oh, that doesn't, you know what I mean? That put you as an awkward middleman where you don't need to put yourself.
I can, in that case, I can say, well, the doctor just informed me that he had prescribed you a course of antibiotic therapy. I just want to let you know that there's a huge major drug-drug interaction between the contraceptive that I had just dispensed with that med. It strictly becomes an educational counseling.
I don't see how this procedure is any different than what we're doing every day. Take hormonal contraceptives out. We're dispensing any medication. Those same scenarios could apply. A patient could have gone to another pharmacy, another provider. We're not calling the doctor's office every time we dispense medication to make sure they're not on something else we're not aware of that's on our system to check for an interaction. We try to make sure our profiles are up to date. We talk to the patient and try to make sure that we have the current list, and we try to make sure patients are using one pharmacy to avoid that. But
hey guys, if I can come back, put the train back on the tracks here, is I think this is already allowed, right, by statute.
Mm-hmm.
But our job today is to create like record keeping parameters and other things and rule, right? I don't think we can put the genie back in a bottle because it's already, now this practice is in motion. So I think we need to just get back on the saddle and talk about record keeping, how long should these records be maintained, what are the training parameters, if that's what's required, needs to be taken place for this statute to live and breed. So
the pharmacist must not section, everyone wants to scrap. Does that sound correct?
I think we should look at Utah's rules as a starting point. It's very simple, very straightforward. It looks like we modeled the legislation after Utah. So I think that would be a good starting point.
Can you pull that up, Lori?
I am right now, one moment.
Okay.
Sorry, the way I sent it to you in email probably isn't great, Cam.
Oh, that's all right. I got it right. Let me know if you guys can read it.
I can, but it could be a little bit bigger. Oh, that's
Good.
nice. Yeah.
Mm.
Looks great.
As someone who's read a bunch of law books and taken a lot of MPJEs, this is really easy to understand and implement, in my opinion.
And then the other specifics could be set forth in the Department of Health standing order around product selection and all those kinds of things.
I do want to just ask a quick question. I'm looking not on the screen, on my other screen, I have the actual standing order also from Utah, and it has a section on there about reporting. Each enrolled pharmacist shall provide the information required in the standing order reporting form to the Utah Department of Health. Just wondering, is that going to be a part of this one as well? So ADHS can know how often this is being used, where, and so on.
Is that, I don't want to add extra hurdles or obstacles to disincentivize pharmacies or pharmacists from implementing this. And so if there's I don't know how burdensome that reporting requirement might be, but I would be in favor of avoiding anything that might be an extra obstacle.
It's possible that the board already has the ability to pick it up. I mean, do you have that ability to just, so you don't need a reporting form, you can see how often it's filled?
No, today we do control substances only, and not non-prescription, non-controlled substances. We have no information on that.
My point is
Since-
evaluate
It would be
without that.
Should,
it would be overly burdensome. I mean, I stopped selling Sudafed in the city of Phoenix when the police department required us to fax our reports every day. It's burdensome.
Mhm.
is there like a similar metric that we could implement here? Because this Utah one has the requirement to do CE. Can we do this similarly to the way immunization is done? Upon renewal of a pharmacist license, someone can attest that they've been participating in this. And that way the board has metrics on how many pharmacists are participating in the program. Is that a better alternative?
If I could ask a question on top of your question is, do we need pharmacists to enroll in this as a program? Or I guess I'm thinking about naloxone in the state of Arizona. There's a standing order from the state. Do pharmacists then need to enroll to be able to dispense the naloxone according to that standing order? I look at this as being very in parallel to that, and I would be in favor of avoiding any extra steps, including the CE, because I trust the pharmacist to dispense the contraceptive that I wrote for. Why not trust them to dispense the contraceptive that was written through the standing order, as long as the patient's self-screening tool was appropriate?
Naloxone is kind of unique because we do track that in our CSPMP.
And that's under my order. And so then I can see
Yeah.
how often it's being used. It'd be nice. It would just be nice as an evaluative tool, I guess.
I agree with that. So Lisa, can you tell me more? So if you're the standing order for all of naloxone in the state of Arizona, then you can just pull your report and see how often it's being used?
No, generally I ask Dr. Gandhi.
Well, I'm wondering if we could, do similar things here, if we would be able to look at that, if
I
our
think
goal
that
is
the challenge is, and I work for a large organization in my day job. I think to your point, the more administrative work that's put on, the less likely organizations are to use this, number one. Number two, from my work with other states, PDMP, the more drugs and more classifications of things that are added to the PMP, typically the slower it runs. So the state of Nebraska has other things that are reported into their PMP, and it doesn't work as well as a clinical tool because you add a lot of other noise to the system that impacts the pharmacist. And I don't know that we could even set it that it would just be the prescriptions that were written under the standing order. I think if we required certain drugs to be reported, it would be all contraceptives for the entire state. And I don't know that that would, I think it might dilute the value of the PMP.
And the data would be very muddy because they'll still accept prescriptions from doctors, right? So capture all this information and then we have to dissect it out on who the pharmacists were. And two databases typically in our agency with the CSPMP and license, they don't cross over. So we can't parse out that pharmacist wrote this one. But to your point, Emily, I mean, it'd be nice to know how many pharmacists may be participating on a renewal. Just I do participate with prescribing and dispensing contraceptives, smoking cessation, whatever it may be that they're looking at.
Cam, in the immunization statute that just passed this year, we changed it from requiring like the board to sign off, if for lack of a better term, for you guys to have to market, but that we as the pharmacist would mark our own profiles for the fact that we're an immunizer. We have to have records in the pharmacy showing that we've been trained in all of that. So I'm wondering if it could be the same where you just turn on a field in there where people could, self-attest or self-report that they're providing the service. Same thing. I mean, we have tobacco prescriptive authority as well for tobacco cessation. So I don't know, just a thought to make it not burdensome on anyone to send in reports. But it's something that we could keep updated in our own profiles.
Absolutely. On renewal, we can create a checkbox on the different authorities out there, what the functions they can do, and they can just checkbox it.
That would help with CE audits too, Cam, honestly. If we were able to do that, we could maybe tie it to some of the other things we're looking at too, like controlled substance dispensing, et cetera.
Just so Laura knows, this wouldn't like be a requirement in order to do this. It's really just the board understanding what type of activity certain pharmacists participate in. That way they can kind of match it up to their continuing education records. It's almost kind of like post hoc. Hey, I did this year, just so you know. It might be helpful.
Looking at this, guys, looking at the Utah rules, the only thing I think we need to expand on is record keeping. How long do we keep those assessment forms?
Is this available for interns as well? Number 2 is what I was looking at. Or is it reserved for pharmacists?
I think our statute is just pharmacists. Let me look at it.
Maybe it's okay though if they do the training while they're an intern.
Yeah, our statute is strictly around pharmacists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it reads engages in dispensing of. It doesn't say furnished or prescribed, but I thought that's what it was kind of implying.
Cam, do we need a separate record keeping requirement, or can't we put it into the general record keeping that pharmacies have to keep?
We could just put it in the general records, saying if you're exercising this, then you shall keep the records accordingly for X number of years.
And I think you probably would anyway, right? If you were the one dispensing it, because there would be a prescription record with that doctor's credentials on it.
prescription record, yes, but now you're doing an assessment form. How long do you want?
Oh, okay.
So I think that's part of, sort of like the medical record now, right?
Got it. Thank you.
Are there best practices from record keeping for other screening tools? Like every time I get my vaccines, I fill out the thing that I'm not allergic to eggs and whatever else. Is there some parallel we could use to, again, just streamline things for pharmacies?
I think from a pharmacy perspective, general rule of thumb of record keeping 7 years, and for prescriptions, I think. And I would think that would bridge over to assessment forms and all that stuff. So any objection to this Utah rule, we can try to modify it to fit our state, and then put something in the record requirement, the assessment tool.
Are technicians able to give the questionnaire, or is there any type of involvement that's allowed? I'm just curious.
We have that delegation rule.
Yeah.
So as long as it wasn't a clinical function, you could utilize them with certain aspects.
That makes sense.
Okay, so if everybody okay, I'll try to make heads and tails of the Utah rule, put it in the way we put it in Arizona, and then add record keeping requirements to the appropriate section.
Yeah, I would say in number 2 and 3, maybe look at, it calls out specific job titles. So maybe just look at that.
Yep. Okay, anything else, guys? Well, Laura, Lisa, thank you for joining on this exciting venture for pharmacy. You can stick around if you guys want. We're going to go into a rules package that we've drafted some time ago. And it's a slow process. If you guys want to be bored, just stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us and thanks for working on this. This is
Thank you.
helpful. Appreciate it.
Madam Chair, if we want to pick up where we left off last time, I believe we left off at page 22 we still got a long ways to go on that rules package.
Yep, take it away.
You guys can see it? All right. So I think we touched on this highlighted proximity word. So we kind of moved past that to next page, 23. So this all this stuff was eliminated per our first discussion. I don't know if you have any comments or questions, and that's related to unearned income. Any comments, objections? Move forward. All right. Next page, 24. Nothing there except for this highlighted section here at the bottom, or underlined section. Subpoenas. A party wanting the board to issue a subpoena shall submit a written request to the board. Thoughts?
I'm just sort of raising this from that definition. Does that imply that the board, since it's a request, has the ability to say no?
That would imply that there, but I'm not sure in what circumstance we would say no. I think it's existing language. We just further clarifying it. If the original language, a party shall request a subpoena in writing, right? So that's just being scratched and reworded per se. That's all.
What's the circumstances of this? Just curious.
It almost sounds cleaner than it did before. That's the only thing. It's just further clarifying. And I think this is more for CYA for permit holders. Before they release information to the board, they'd like some paper trail on it.
Oh, okay. That
So
makes sense. Right.
Well, it's also theoretically, if it's a formal hearing, the pharmacist or pharmacy can ask the board to issue a subpoena to get records from a third party.
absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, page 25. Got some crossed out language, which didn't make sense anyways, but that's why it's no longer there. Any thoughts, guys? Okay, next page.
So does this D fix? I don't even remember the exact circumstance, but we had people where they couldn't renew because they'd been out of practice for a little while. They either had to retake the test. You know what I mean? They had like bad circumstance we needed to fix. There was like a gap.
Yeah, so there's two sections here. There's C and D. So one of them is if they let their license lapse and have not practiced anywhere in another jurisdiction or anywhere, then they have to take the whole MPJE and NAPLEX. And D basically says that if they let their license lapse in Arizona, but did practice in another jurisdiction, then they can reinstate their license, but they still have to take the MPJE.
Mhm.
So again, here we eliminated kind of like a lot of redundant language. Colleges that are already approved to be College of Pharmacies have certain requirements by AACP and so forth. So we're kind of eliminating extra burden. We were asking for how many hours did you finish as far as experiential training, but if they're an approved college, they already have to do a minimum amount of hours to maintain their accreditation. So it was redundant language, redundant effort by the board as well. So we're eliminating some of that. We also further streamlined and trying to expedite interns to be licensed sooner. That's why you see in number 3 that underlined language. Because once NABP has all the information, they can release them to test even before we review the application. So hopefully by the time we review the application, they've taken the test already, passed it, and then we can open them up right away. The process prior to us implementing that was we have to review their application, deem it complete, and then release them a test, which delays them to be licensed another 3-4 weeks. Does that make sense, guys? I hope I explained it right.
That makes sense.
All right. Page 27.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this page before I move on? 28. We're good? Comments, questions?
Dr. Gandhi, just for my recollection, did we already like go over these things? This is just kind of like reviewing it as a draft, because I'm recalling a few of these things from like when we met earlier.
Oh yeah, this is
Okay.
this is what I got back from my rule writer.
Okay.
And if you look at the first 22 pages that we had a meeting on last time, we still had some questions and made some other modifications.
Perfect.
So this is what I captured from our original meeting. And hopefully I captured it all. We're just reviewing it.
Perfect.
Sure I miss anything.
I have a question, but it's not in this section. It's under the red C stamp definition.
All right, page 28.
It's just a grammatical question. Here we go. Oh, it looks like it's been fixed. It's what the copy I read says the permit do not instead of does not.
I just put the ES in right now. So
Oh, okay. Okay. And under state of emergency, there was a question about the terrorist attack or of a pandemic. And I think of needed to be taken out, or a pandemic. Yeah, does that make more sense, or a pandemic? Yeah, and I think like commas in the state of emergency, natural disaster, comma, terrorist attack, I think, comma, pandemic, comma, or other public health emergency.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm a little granular, but
Oh, that's good.
I have a comment to or question on, are we on page, sorry, my computer for some reason it wasn't pulling up the meeting, so I'm kind of looking on my phone, trying to follow along on but under licensure by Reciprocity, it's page 30. Were we on that page yet, or did I skip ahead?
well, I made him go back, so.
Oh, okay,
Over.
okay, I was.
Let me see. Yeah, I think you're a little bit, we're about to get there, Kelly.
Okay, I'll wait.
All right, page 29.
I'm also curious, I apologize for this. If I have to drop at 3, will we lose quorum?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
I
I'll figure some.
thought we were okay because Kelly and Mark joined. I think we have one extra right now. Kim, can we double check the math?
I will double check it right now.
I have to leave at 3:45. Sorry, guys.
I have to pick up my daughter at 3:32.
Looks like we might adjourn a little bit early.
All right, so we'll have Lori, we'll have Kristen till a little bit before 4,
Yeah.
Kevin till 3:30, Emily till 3. Kelly, you're in for a long haul.
3 is in 4 minutes.
Mark and Roger. So yeah, we would still have 6. If Kevin drops off at 3:30, we're down to 5 and we're no longer at a quorum.
So we'll have to end at 3:30.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for getting on, Emily, even though you couldn't be on the whole meeting. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Really appreciate it. And I apologize for having a drop.
All right. Any questions on this page, guys?
No.
No? Okay. Kelly, you're on page 30, reciprocity language. Kelly, can you hear us?
Sorry, I was on mute. Under, let's see, A1, it looks like a statement was added and qualified under ARS 32-1922B, which states that somebody basically that they have to provide evidence that they've had the proper education, which makes sense, of good moral character, but then provides proof to the board that they haven't had any discipline on their license, that their license is in good standing. So does that mean nobody can reciprocate if they've got any issues? So I don't think that was in the rules before, and I don't remember if we talked about adding additional requirements in there, or restrictions, I should say, to reciprocity.
Even if they've had discipline in another jurisdiction based on what it was, we still evaluate today. And we'll have an application meeting with the chair, vice chair, or we'll have them appear if they had a substance use disorder or still on that program. I think controlled substances and compounding practices are huge right now, so we would automatically have them appear before the board.
But it says they're not eligible because it's under eligibility. So my question would be, how are we to be sure that that's the case? Because as I read it, you're not eligible unless you meet that criteria.
And maybe we need to evaluate the word eligible, whether that's the appropriate term that we need to use there.
Well, why did we add and qualified under? It wasn't in there before.
It wasn't in there, but it is in 32-19-22 qualifications for an applicant. So we're basically just bridging the two together and referencing that. So even though it wasn't directly stated in 203, it is in statute.
So do we need it if it's in statute? Because it's still a requirement if it's in statute. Why do we need to restate it?
Yeah, we don't have to.
But if it's still required,
It doesn't say that in statute, though. It says the board may license a pharmacist if that person, and then it gives the list. But this makes it sound like qualified under, meaning using that as a criteria. It's kind of confusing, I think, but
it'd go before the board if they had discipline and they were reciprocating, right?
I don't know, you know, I guess I would like to see verbiage in there to make sure it's clear, because the way that this reads, and maybe we could ask a legal interpretation or something, because the way I read it.
Well, I think Kelly's point is a good one here, that we don't want to make it so it's impossible for them to go forward here.
I agree with that. Just because somebody has discipline in another state doesn't mean that we wouldn't give them a license in the state. And we shouldn't confuse an potential applicant to make them feel like they're not eligible
Right.
just because they've had prior discipline.
Mhm.
I don't have any problem with them having to disclose it and the board making an evaluation, but that doesn't automatically exclude them.
Agreed.
I agree with this, and I'm going to drop now. Thanks all. Apologies for
Bye.
dropping off.
Bye.
All right, let me wordsmith this thing a little bit more, because I think it's if I remove eligibility and the word eligible and massage it to a softer, more encompassing word, that may satisfy it. So I'll work on that one.
I mean, it may just be, you know, licensure by reciprocity. A person must must meet the requirements of 32-19-22B and be licensed in another jurisdiction.
That's
Something
a good
like that.
suggestion, Roger.
Person must be, I'm sorry, go ahead, Roger.
Be the hard part. A person must meet must comply with ARS 32-19-22B and be licensed in another jurisdiction.
The statute, though, B is referring to people who can get licensed without licensure examination. So are we talking about the same thing or adding? I just want to make sure that we're not, that's being added in the right section.
Let's not try and wordsmith while we're on the fly. Cam, why don't you play with it and we'll look at it next time.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, how about the rest of it, guys?
I throw this out here just because we should have the discussion about it. I don't agree with it, but as many of you know, Idaho got rid of their requirement for the MPJE. I simply throw it out here since we're talking about it at this point. I think it's still a worthwhile test, but I want to make sure we've at least had spent 10 seconds on it.
I've taken 27 MPJEs. They're all almost exactly the same. Somebody needs to go to NABP and just say, you know, they're all exactly the same. Maybe we should just have one. But
AACP just brought that forward.
did they?
Yeah.
Wonderful. That's a good idea. I vote aye.
NABP is working on a national exam, so there's more to come on that one.
So maybe we should just hold off and see what comes of that. and then address it.
Yeah, yeah. Anything on this page, guys?
I thought did we talk about contact hours using that term, or we just got rid of CEUs?
I think we just got rid of CEUs.
Okay.
It gets confusing when you say 30 contact hours, 3.0 CEU. Half the world knows about what that is and the other half doesn't. So thoughts on this page?
Do we want to include, okay, never mind, it is there. So if we talk about requiring continuing education for the purposes of contraceptives, we would want to add that under 2 also, just to call that out there. Because we're trying to make sure that we have all those notated, all the special things that we have. If that's going to be a requirement. I don't know that we landed that CE is going to be a requirement.
I think Ms. Mercer indicated that, pharmacists are responsible if they're going to exercise that. They should stay up to date on that, on the practice standards.
I'm perfectly happy with that.
Anything on this page, guys? We are reducing reciprocity fee by half, by the way. That's a recommendation. Anything, guys, on this one?
Pam, I'm just looking at G with the intern application. G2 has the board office shall deem an application form received on the date the board office electronically or manually date stamps the form. That line is in there half a dozen different times about when something is received. I'm wondering if we need to have it in all these different sections, if there's a way to just have it more generally, that a document is received by the board when. G2,
I'm sorry, G2?
yeah. Or new G2. But that line I've seen 4 or 5 times, maybe even maybe 6 throughout the board, throughout lots of the rules. Just if there's a way that would help shorten if we got rid of it, if we only had to do it once instead of 6 times.
Okay, I made note. I'll work on that. Not a whole lot of changes here, just clarifications. So again, this whole section under 423.303 is captured by another accrediting body, so there was no reason for us to really have it. Keep going. Any questions? Right.
Is it confusing, just throwing this out here for sake of conversation, is it confusing that we have here that a pharmacist and an intern can take an oral prescription and some of these things, when some of these tasks could also be performed by a technician under the delegation rule? To me, with the delegation rules, it's still clear, but I don't know that everybody would read it that same way.
I think the only difference, Lori, is the technicians would have to be delegated. This is not necessarily a delegated task. These are folks that are authorized to do it without the delegation.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just trying to make sure we avoid confusion for the public too.
Maybe, and not to wordsmith on the fly, but maybe notwithstanding the provisions in the delegation rule, this is here. So it would at least alert someone, oh, wait, there's an exception somewhere. I got to go look for that.
And I don't want to overcomplicate it, but I also want to make sure that people are able to use the delegation rule as well.
Mhm. I like that, adding some kind of reference citation.
Mark, where do you propose we add that?
I don't know, maybe, let's see, maybe at the very beginning, at the beginning of A, notwithstanding,
Before-
something,
before-
whatever.
But-
reference.
or
But
after?
not all of this stuff would necessarily, I don't know, let me read through all of it.
Oh,
I get what you're saying. And that's where I struggle with this too. I don't want to make it too complicated.
yeah, I mean, notwithstanding, or something to the effect of nothing in this section shall prohibit implementation of the delegation rule or something. So it's not saying the delegation rule allows all these things, but this thing doesn't preempt the delegation rule. We do that in the remote work, the work from home thing. We say nothing in this section prohibits someone from accessing the computer record at home.
Yeah, and we do the same thing a little further in the rule or on final accuracy check for the technology assisted product verification. And that's where those other rules kind of get pulled into that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's instead of notwithstanding, we could say nothing in this section prohibits the things that are allowed in the delegation rule.
Yeah, that's what K is. Current K is. Nothing in this section prevents a hospital pharmacist from accepting a prescription order according to the rules pertaining specifically to the hospitals. I guess you could add one more statement at the end of this too, for that, or at the beginning. I don't know, just food for thought. We don't have to decide today, but I just, something that maybe pause for a second when I was reading it again.
Yeah, if we're saying only delegated tasks, an intern is also supervised to do these tasks as well. So I think it makes sense to have it here.
I haven't got notice. But we can go back a little bit.
Looks like Cam stepped away and is not on mute.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, Kristen, you were saying something, I missed it.
Oh, I just said the intern is also delegated or supervised. So if we're making that statement, I think this makes sense to add this as well.
Okay.
Do we have document identity highlighted because we haven't decided how we want it worded?
Well, it says manually initial the complete, right? So as long as, I think if it says we have it documented, whatever means it's documented, electronic, manual, whatever it is, it would be acceptable.
I agree.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you were looking for language there.
No, I think we'll just, as long as there's a identity documented in any way, shape, or form is fine.
Okay. You know, that technology assisted verification completely baffles me. I'm not sure what the purpose is if after it's been verified by the technician and by technology that a pharmacist has to do the final check.
They don't have to do the final check.
That's what it says in parentheses there.
No, that was my intern's note, and we have.
Oh, okay.
So-
I was like, I don't even understand. What's the point?
No, they don't have to verify the product. They still have to verify the label and the information on the label, but not the product itself.
So if they did an upfront verification of that information and it was correct, it would be the
Yeah.
final verification.
Okay, that was always my understanding. And then when I read this again and it had that note, I'm like, what? Okay, thank you.
I had a question on this one right here. Does this need to be, I mean, an intern, should they still be they should be under supervision of a pharmacist, I would think still.
Yeah.
I agree.
Any questions on this page, remainder of it? Good.
F, why are we taking out that the intern? Okay, no, interns can still document consultation.
Yes. The grad intern and pharmacy intern notations throughout our rules.
We got rid of all those, yeah.
Just didn't make sense because I didn't see a difference in function. Not much on this page.
Cam, can you explain F? The changes to that, because the one looks like it's talking about like internet prescribing, but is there like a reference and statute that we could, because I know that there's certain things where it's allowed if it's for like infectious disease and standing orders.
I think it's more telemedicine, how broad it's become.
Mhm.
And that's where my rule writer kind of brought it to my attention, saying, hey, Arizona's got the most lenient telemedicine language on the planet. So, well, not on the planet, in the US, but it's trying to capture that in essence.
So this is just loosening it up then, basically.
Yeah, it's still
Really,
have to have a relationship, but
but it doesn't define how the relationship exists necessarily.
correct.
But it's under the unethical practices, so the title of it, medical practitioner patient relationship required before dispensing. Issued. And what about prescriptions issued by like pharmacists under collaborative practice or through?
The standing order.
Yeah, or like tobacco cessation, vaccines technically too, because we're ordering those. Do we need to differentiate or state anything here? Since it's being, I guess, reclassified or making it more broad.
I mean, I'll refer to Roger and Mark, but since that practice is identified in a different statute, this wouldn't come into play because of that reason.
I think that's correct. I mean, I'm fine with the way this has been revised here.
The patient physician relationship that we just went by, that was for any prescribing. I just want to go back to it. Okay, sorry. It feels contradictory to me too. I know Roger just gave the okay. I'm just a little confused. I feel like it's contradicting the birth control allowance and all the other things like Kelly mentioned.
Well, do you want to just put in without a valid medical practitioner-patient relationship or valid exception? If that makes it cleaner, you know.
Remind me what the definition of medical practitioner is. I think we fit into that. I think it's enough. Isn't it anyone authorized to
Prescribe.
write a prescription? Yeah. And so if we're authorized to write a prescription, we hit the medical practitioner.
Well, it says shall first conduct a physical examination on the person.
No, this doesn't say that.
No, I'm sorry, I was looking at the reference of the definitions of a medical practitioner patient relationship.
I mean, my point is someone needs to check, but I vaguely remember being confused about this in previous calls.
given the time and where we are, Lori, is this the right place to stop?
Yeah, I think so. Kim, can you do some research on that for the next meeting?
Medical practice.
I highlighted it.
Definition of medical practitioner: any medical doctor, doctor of osteopathic medicine, dentist, podiatrist, veterinarian, or other person who is licensed and authorized by law to use and prescribe drugs and devices to treat sick and injured human beings or animals, or to diagnose, prevent sickness, blah, 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 in any state and territory of the United States. So it's okay. Pharmacists are in that definition.
But under R423.110, if you look up a medical practitioner relationship, it does say about a physical exam.
So let's start here with this one for the next time, because then we can spend more time on it.
Yeah, this definitely needs some more time.
Okay.
All right.
Until we meet again.
Just
We
a
will
quick comment.
adjourn at,
Or if I make just a quick comment.
Yeah.
We did modify that medical practitioner patient relationship language. It's on the screen.
we got rid of first to conduct the physical exam.
Yep.
So I think it's okay. What do you guys think?
So this is replacing what's in our, whatever it is, the R423.110 definition.
That's where it is right now, the definition. This is the updated definition that we had all come
We
to.
already worked on.
Of what a medical practitioner is, but is it a medical practitioner patient relationship is what I was looking at.
That's the medical practitioner relationship. That's what is amended.
Right here, this.
Okay. Yes. Okay, thank you. I was looking at the wrong section.
All right, guys, we ended on 47. We'll start up again, hopefully sooner than later, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate everybody's time and attendance today.
Bye, guys.
Yes, bye.